Good morning to you. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Thank you so much for being here with us on From the South. Firstly, we go to Guatemala, where the president, Otto Perez Molina, finally submitted his resignation after a nationwide call for him to give up office. This follows the decision by Congress to strip him of his immunity. A federal judge had also issued a travel ban against Perez Molina to prevent him from fleeing the country. Later, another judge issued an order for his arrest. The president insisted in his letter of resignation that he is innocent. His press office said that the Congress's decision was influenced by the fact that elections are this coming Sunday.
We shouldn't forget that at the heart of this process is an electoral campaign, and the Congress members are going for a re-election. They will not risk their position with a vote against Perez, so everyone came together to take immunity from him.
And President Perez Molina has been in office since 2012. His government has been shaken by a massive corruption scandal that led to the resignations of many of his cabinet members and other high-ranking officials. The corruption scheme, known as the Linea or the Line, involved bribing business people in exchange for tax cuts, and the monetary bribes were funneled to private accounts owned by top officials. The scandal also caused hundreds of thousands of citizens to repeatedly take to the streets in protest against corruption and to demand the president's resignation. Recently, his vice president, Roxana Baldetti, was arrested after she resigned. However, among Guatemalans, the doubt remains whether justice will actually be served.
Unfortunately, we live in a country where nothing ever happens to powerful people. They always get away with everything. They commit genocide, they steal, and they always go free. I think it's fair, and I hope that justice will be done.
The UNASUR Secretary General Ernesto Sampo invited the presidents of Venezuela and Colombia for a meeting to discuss the border issue between both countries. The meeting could take place as soon as this coming Sunday, Sampo said in a statement. He added that he hoped the crisis between both nations could end at the coming meeting. The invitation comes a day after Sampo announced that he would propose a commission to monitor human rights at the border between Venezuela and Colombia. Various border crossings were ordered closed by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in light of the massive crimes being committed there by Colombian paramilitary troops and drug traffickers. Now to Mexico, where President Enrique Peña Nieto delivered his State of the Union address. The president weighed in on violence and corruption afflicting the nation whilst vowing to not raise taxes. Peña Nieto was elected in 2012 to a 6-year term, promising robust economic growth via economic reforms and to tame violent crime following years of drug war mayhem. But crime and violence are on the rise as well as corruption. His government has been widely affected by the escape of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman from jail, also the unsolved case of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students, as well as other scandals involving multi-million-dollar homes acquired under questionable circumstances.
Our country was profoundly hurt by a series of unfortunate incidents. The incident of Iguala, the escape at the high-security prison. They are reminders of situations of violence, crime, and the weakness of the rule of law. They are also signs of conflicting interests that have also involved the head of government, as well as complaints of corruption in municipalities, states, and federally, and in some cases in the private sector have generated annoyance, outrage in Mexican society.
The justice system in Mexico's violence-ravaged state of Guerrero has collapsed. This is the conclusion made by a damning report from New York-based advocacy group Open Society of Justice Initiative. They accused the Mexican police investigators of widely using torture tactics on suspects. They said this is due to negligence, impunity, and an inability to efficiently investigate crime. They also accused many elements of the police force of being connected to organized crime.
We see in this report that many elements of the police force are linked to organized crime. that many prosecutors don't have the technical capacity to investigate crime without using methods like torture, that the judiciary body in Guerrero State is not sufficiently independent from the executive and prosecutors.
We now go to our correspondent, Natalia Margarita, in Colombia. Now, Natalia has an update on the increasing conflict that the government is facing, with thousands of angry campesinos demanding compliance of agreements that were signed 2 years ago.
It was 2013 when, in an attempt to bring to an end a massive agrarian strike, the government committed to rural development. Almost 2 years have passed, and rural leaders say the government has failed to comply with 99% of the agreements.
Even one potato has been planted, but instead the big industry, the monoculture plantations for instance, in Orinoquia region have been advancing. The state budget seemed to be available for those monocultures.
According to this year's agrarian census, the poverty rate in Colombia's countryside is around 45%. Less than 10% of the rural population have received technical assistance, and over 80% lack farming equipment.
There is an evident displacement to this country's big cities that is swelling the poorer regions. People are leaving, seeking employment opportunities. We even have communities in which very few inhabited houses are left, as many people have been fleeing.
Land concentration has always been at the core of Colombia's armed and social conflict. Now the agrarian census has revealed that little had changed. 0.4% are the owners of over 40% of the rural lands.
As many people are fearing to lose the small piece of land that they have left, they are selling it to the best bidder. But also the multinationals are sending their people to threat and put pressure so that they can buy their lands. That means that we are being displaced from all sides.
Rural leaders say that the government is favoring the big companies in terms of opportunities and land concessions, something they find contradictory with the peace process underway in Havana.
The government is just interested in the laying down of arms by the FARC. Meanwhile, it continues to criminalize social protest, to monopolize land, to take control of the hydrocarbons and mineral resources in general, all the wealth in order to give it away to their transnational ally.
Meanwhile, for the next year, the government is planning to reduce the budget for rural development in a 52%, something that have triggered even further criticism. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
In world news, we begin with the tragic story of a Syrian boy found dead, washed up off a popular Turkish beach, as we give you a brief of other stories making headlines across the globe.
The body of boy Aylan Kurdi washed up the shore of Turkey, sending shockwaves across Europe and underscoring the way they are dealing with refugees in violation of international law. The small boy, dressed in a red t-shirt and blue shorts, was lying face down on the sand of the popular resort city Bodrum. He was one of 11 Syrians who drowned while trying to reach Europe from Turkey, fleeing violence in their country. The UN said over 2,600 people have died this year trying to cross the Mediterranean. A Syrian refugee told of her experience.
If we want to immigrate and drown in the sea, then why go? If they allow us to immigrate legally, then we should leave Lebanon because we cannot bear it anymore. The situation in Lebanon is unbearable.
Chinese President Xi Jinping said Thursday he would cut troops numbers by 300,000 during the country's parade to commemorate victory over Japan in the World War II. The Chinese army is one of the biggest in the world, with more than 2.3 million troops. In recent years, the growing Chinese military confidence had drawn concern from the West. China has cut the numbers of its armed forces 3 times over the past 3 decades. The Chinese president assured his country is committed to peace.
For peace, China will uphold the path of peaceful development. The Chinese people have always loved peace. No matter how far we have come, China will never be a hegemon, will never attempt expansion, will never place the misery we once felt into other nationalities.
2 blasts in Yemen killed at least 28 people and injured about 100 in the capital Sana'a. The suicide attacks were claimed by the Islamic State group. They targeted Al-Moyad Mosque, where both Sunni and Shiite gather for prayers. The group has been gaining ground in Yemen as fighters take advantage of the security gap created by a months-long conflict between rebels and government forces supported by Saudi Arabia and the West.
Worshippers were targeted in the mosque as they were performing prayers. A Takfiri Daesh Islamic State suicide bomber entered carrying an explosive belt and blew himself up between the worshippers inside the mosque.
Many thanks to our news team in Quito, Ecuador for the World News Brief. We end now with the world-famous port of Acapulco in Mexico, which has an 80-year-old tradition that attracts tourists from across the globe. Generations of Mexican cliff divers have made a living entertaining tourists visit Acapulco. The tradition is known as La Quebrada, or the ravine. This dates back 80 years when divers dared each other to jump from the resort city's 35-meter cliffs. Wow. But the divers are now facing a new kind of risk as their livelihoods are under threat from a wave of violence that is scaring tourists away. So far this year, 500 people have been killed in the city. For more on these and other stories, please visit our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Rega Devines. We'll have another news brief for you just after midday.